Wisecrack, Greg here. Today we're looking at the show about everyone's favorite tiny-hatted humanitarian, the weird, hilarious, and often heartwarming Nickelodeon classic Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold stands out among kids' shows for the way it portrays the life of a city kid, every dirty, smelly, terrifying second of it. On the streets, Arnold and his friends cross paths with grumpy, unhoused people.
Hey, what are you doing in my house? Go away!
Face down giant rats.
Rats!
And even get mugged. At home, the kids are exposed to neglect and alcoholism.
I need a smoothie.
And witness scenes of domestic violence.
You were at the racetrack.
I wasn't at the racetrack. I was looking for a job in the same neighborhood as the racetrack.
What's more, the show tends to treat these things as a backdrop, facts of life to be taken in stride. We're not on Sesame Street anymore, kids. So why does this kids show make city life look so dang bleak? And what can it teach us about the way our environment shapes our lives? Let's find out in this Wisecrack Edition on Hey Arnold. And spoilers ahead? I guess. Who hasn't seen this? Before we get into Hey Arnold, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the holidays. This is the time of year where we come together with our friends and family to celebrate the past year and show our love and appreciation through the giving of gifts. You know what? F that, man. Why should I have to waste my own money to buy a present for an uncle that once asked for my high school girlfriend's phone number? Yeah, this year, gift yourself with some amazing Wisecrack merch. We've got shirts, sweaters, hats, and mugs, which are perfect for sipping on some rum-spiked eggnog while suffering through a holiday Zoom call. And if you order right now with code DEADINSIDE, you'll get 10% off. So take care of yourself this year and worry about everyone else next year. Or if you want to make Santa proud, you can buy some decorative socks for your little brother if that's your thing. This special offer only lasts through the end of this short of a year, so head to wisecrack.store and use the code DEADINSIDE. Now back to the show. Arnold and his friends grow up in a world far removed from Kevin McAllister's swanky room at the Plaza Hotel. With the exception of Rhonda and sometimes Helga, most of the kids in Arnold's neighborhood come from families who struggle to make ends meet.
55 cents? Oh, they raised the bus fare another nickel.
Parts of the neighborhood are run down or completely abandoned, and these crappy conditions obviously affect the characters.
I'm gonna starve to death and get eaten by rats!
But Hey Arnold isn't just a show about city grit as seen by a child. It is, in part, a show about how the geography around a person can shape their inner life. And for the kids of Hillwood, that geography is the city itself. To understand this, we can turn to the philosophical and artistic movement known as Situationism. Situationists believe that modern life was, as writer Grail Marcus puts it, boring and therefore wrong. That's largely because it breeds loneliness and alienates people from each other. And they blame much of that on city life. Situationist Guy Debord theorized an entire discipline to study its effects called Psychogeography, which he defines as the study of the precise laws and specific effects of the geographical environment, consciously organized or not, on the emotions and behavior of individuals. And in regards to Debord's life in Paris, the effects were, in his humble opinion, not great. Now, Debord noted, as many have, that people who lived in desert areas tended to develop monotheistic religions. In contrast, he argued that life in certain parts of Paris was conducive rather to atheism, to oblivion, and to the disorientation of habitual reflexes. In other words, life in his city made you an unhappy jerk. It also maybe left you godless, which we can loosely interpret as not believing in much of anything, because the Situationists weren't so sacred about organized religion themselves. Arnold's Hillwood is quite gritty and unfriendly to children. Pigeons eat from overflowing garbage cans, subways break down, and buildings seem large and intimidating. Also, an eternal scourge of rats actually play critical roles in plot lines, but not in a cool pizza rat way. Arnold lives in a boarding house with a literal sign reading, "No kids," sharing crowded spaces with adults who constantly get into verbal and sometimes physical altercations. Hillwood adults suffer from alcoholism, gambling addictions, and unemployment. In one episode, Arnold gets mugged, and in another, he's assaulted by scary neighborhood hooligans and has to be saved by a weirdo superhero Monkey Man. The generalized anxiety the kids feel about their city is exemplified when Grandpa tells them about a terrifying
haunted train.
Upon seeking it out, they learn that the train simply transports steel workers, proving that the normal day-to-day city life can, through the eyes of a child, be rendered truly scary.
We're all gonna die!
Under the influence of a place like Hillwood, DeBoer probably won't be surprised that many of the neighborhood children already act and behave like jaded adults. Arnold's best friend Gerald, for instance, tends to be self-centered, looking out for his own interests at the expense of others. While he usually comes around, his first instinct is often to take the easiest, most personally convenient route. In the show's very first episode, for example, Arnold and Gerald skipped out on their roles in Helga's school play. Conflicted, Arnold tells him,
"Think of Helga and her play, and all the kids back at school that we're letting down."
What's your point?
In a similar way, Helga takes after her father Bob in holding a ruthless, aggressively materialist view of the world.
Come off your high horse, sister. Christmas is about presents. It's about getting as much stuff as you can possibly get.
Through these jaded children and the even more jaded adults, we see what situationist Abdel Hafid Hatib said about city life manifested. This world governs our way of being, and it grinds us down. Even Arnold isn't safe from this threat. After being mugged, he becomes obsessed with learning martial arts to defend himself, and has one telling moment when he imitates the crazed Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver.
You talking to me?
Fittingly, Bickle is the character in cinematic history most famous for being negatively affected by life in a decaying metropolis. You talking to me? Situationists believe that the true evil of the city is that it's designed primarily to serve the interests of business. And when an urban area is developed in pursuit of profit, which DeBoer and co seem to think is true, it will necessarily be built to better serve more profitable areas. Classy neighborhoods with upscale French cafes equal clean streets, flowery medians, and uncracked sidewalks. Working class ones like Arnold's get dirty streets, loud overpasses, and junkyards. This obviously hurts working people. That's why New York City's public transit is designed to pump workers into a central hub from the outer boroughs, but not so much for you to visit your friend in another neighborhood in Queens. People like Arnold get the short end of the stick when it comes to services like public transit. This is even jokingly referenced on the That Subway episode, when Gerald points to a maze of maps tracking the complex, circuitous track the kids must traverse to make it home.
Oh no, we should really be on the app.
What's more, there are almost no publicly owned gathering places the kids can enjoy. They spend most of their time on the street or in reappropriated wastelands of urban living like landfills or vacant lots.
This lot was full of junk when we found it.
And we cleaned it up and turned it into Geraldville.
But it's not all doom and gloom. The situationists, like Arnold, were willing to at least try to look on the bright side. The situationists wandered their urban areas for days, occasionally months, even spending the night in catacombs just to mix things up. Creepy and cool. Why? They were in pursuit of what theorist Ivan Checheglov called forgotten desires, or as Grail puts it, images of play, eccentricity, secret rebellion, creativity, and negation. Negation basically means refusal to play by the rules of how a city naturally leads you to behave, how the psychogeography and structure of it might compel you to. Basically, they were seeking out signs that people were refusing to settle for the conditioned, awful aspects of urban living. And that's the kids in Hey Arnold in a nutshell. They turn a garbage dump into a playground, and dirty streets into baseball fields, and a vacant grassy lot into a football field. Though their neighborhood has almost no trees, they turn the one good one into a dope treehouse and protect it from being knocked down and replaced by a beeper store. These are all examples of what the situationists looked for when they wandered cityscapes. They were, in Guy Debord's words, in quest of another use of the urban landscape. In quest of new passions, that is to say, in search of people enjoying their urban areas in ways the planners had never anticipated. Still, for the most part, this cityscape is a bit bleak, but the show portrays this hostile environment with a weird, wonderful visual style that says up yours to reality and plays freely with the laws of physics. More specifically, when the characters in Hey Arnold are feeling certain emotions, often confusion or fear, the physical environment will shift and change around them, in order to better reflect those subjective feelings to the audience. It's a weird reflection of psychogeography that ends up borrowing from another 20th century art movement, which also dealt with dark realities of modern life: German Expressionism. German Expressionism was an early 20th century art movement that prioritized communicating emotions over expressing realism. Interestingly enough, much of German Expressionist film was about making sense of the startling and sometimes disturbing forces of urban life, often through steep, strange angles, disjointed editing, and major distortions of scale. We see a similar effect in Hey Arnold in the opening minutes of the episode Das Subway. Buildings and streets that are normally straight appear curved and distorted. This foreshadows the sense of disorder and chaos that will take over completely when the kid's train car breaks down in a rat-infested subway tunnel.
Big, open spaces.
Throughout, the show frequently takes huge artistic liberties with proportion, shadow, and color, sacrificing the illusion of animated realism you find in a show like King of the Hill in order to more directly convey the chaotic inner worlds of its often disturbed characters. What's more, German Expressionist set designs, in particular, were often wonky and twisted to the point of looking like something out of a pretty dark Dr. Seuss novel. The same thing will happen in Hey Arnold, when a character is going through a particularly eerie experience. Compare the dark, winding tenement hallways a terrified Arnold runs through in the classic episode Pigeon Man, to shots from the famous German Expressionist film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. In a similar way, the ghost story-driven Four-Eyed Jack pulls lots of inspiration from the laboratory scenes in the German Expressionist sci-fi film Metropolis and its big-haired, wide-eyed inventor character Rotwang, who inspired the mad scientist trope as we know it today. In this darkly rendered cityscape, it's no wonder some kids turn out pretty jaded. But of course, there's one character who stands out.
Arnold, what a hopeless humanitarian, what a chivalric chump, what an overeager do-good geek.
Despite his friend's cynicism and daily evidence of human shortcomings, Arnold remains committed to seeing and bringing out the best in people.
I'm responsible. I can't just ignore her.
Of course you can.
Gerald.
All right, but I'm warning you, this is not gonna be fun.
The recurring conflict between Arnold's optimism and everyone else's pessimism points to one of the questions at the heart of the show, namely, the matter of human nature. Now, when you live in a dirty, dangerous city like Arnold's, you can't blame folks for not taking much stock in the goodness of humanity. Still, Arnold clings stubbornly to the belief that there is good in every person, even if it's been buried under layers of hurt.
I mean, just because you're not rich anymore doesn't mean you're a different person. You were Rhonda when you had money, and you could still be the same Rhonda now that you don't.
And he makes it a daily mission to find that good and help people bring it out. In this way, Arnold's philosophy is very similar to that of Mengzi, aka Mencius, a Chinese Confucian philosopher who taught that all humans have an inherent capacity for goodness. They can grow that goodness provided they have access to the basic necessities for a healthy life: food, shelter, warm clothing, etc. While not philosophical twins, there's still a certain thematic overlap with our psychogeographers convinced that urban sprawl was rotting away our souls. Mengzi famously compared the human ability to grow in virtue to a sprout, like a little plant just breaking out of its seed. If you deny a sprout air, water, and sunlight, it's not going to grow. But if carefully tended, the tiniest seedling can become a mighty tree. In the same way, when we tend to our innate ability to be kind or courageous or creative, that virtue can mature into a powerful force. Just look at Jack Black. Many episodes focus on our boy helping someone deal with a problem or behavior so that they can live a fuller life. Consider the time he helps another boy at school kick the disturbingly literal addiction to chocolate.
I need to get off chocolate. I mean, dancing for molten milk balls and digging in dumpsters. I'm like a clown, a chocolate clown.
But of course, Arnold's eternal project, the one person whose good side he sees but can't bring out, is Helga G. Pataki.
One side, moron. I'm walking here.
Helga is mean and abrasive to the neighborhood kids, especially to Arnold, who she secretly loves. She shoves away anyone who tries to get close to her, sometimes literally. But thanks to his belief in people's inherent capacity for goodness, Arnold senses a side of Helga that normally only the audience gets to see. A part of her that recognizes and is moved by kindness and beauty.
You think you're so bad, but deep down, I don't think you are.
The tragedy of Helga is that her best attributes are squashed by neglectful, repressive home life, which Mungza would recognize as an obstacle to her growth and happiness. Especially in the later seasons, there's good evidence that Helga is some kind of budding artistic genius. Remember that time she memorized the entirety of Romeo and Juliet in one freaking night?
No sweat. I got all night.
Just for the chance to kiss Arnold with plausible deniability? Not to mention, she's already offering pointed critiques of professional artwork at 9 years old.
You like Edward Hopper?
I do.
Yeah, he's okay. He's a little simple, though. And what's his deal with women, anyway?
That's pretty astute for a fourth grader.
But Helga's parents do just about nothing to nurture this sprout of creativity, constantly ignoring and even neglecting her to lavish praise on her perfect older sister.
Did you pick up my winter coat from the cleaners?
What? Oh, Helga, I forgot. All the excitement. Your sister being home from Alaska. But don't worry, because the weatherman said that it should stay above freezing for most of the day.
It's no wonder Helga puts up a front to hide her sensitive side.
If only he could see past my mean, blustery veneer and into my soft, mushy interior, wherein I adore him.
But while the other kids can dismiss that front as just Helga being Helga, Arnold gets extremely frustrated with it. He's committed to seeing everyone's potential for goodness, so he views Helga's meanness as a choice, not a permanent personality trait.
Why can't you just admit it? You're not this mean.
So is he right or just naive? And if there is hope for all the wounded people in this crazy city, what's the best way to help them find their inner goodness? In the long run, the show seems to back Arnold's optimistic view of people. We see this clearly in Arnold's Christmas, which ends with Helga redeeming her earlier selfish attitude, in this case by giving away her coveted Nancy Spumoni snow boots to help Arnold reunite a family. And though it's never easy, the show depicts many other characters learning to grow past their shortcomings and embody their best qualities. Whether that's Chocolate Boy finding the strength to kick the beans, or Stoop Kid finding the courage to leave his stoop. Arnold's journey convincing Stoop Kid to overcome his fear is one of the clearest examples of what the show is really about. Namely, finding an unexpected solution to the problems of stress and isolation caused by busy, cramped city lives. After trying and failing to train Stoop Kid to leave his porch, Arnold inspires him to be courageous by telling him about the world beyond his stoop.
You may have your little stoop here, but beyond this stoop, there's a whole bunch of other stoops.
In other words, Arnold seems to be arguing that the solution to isolation and fear, the way to bring out our best selves, is through participation in the wider world and community, the one that we're often cut off from as a result of urban psychogeography. The idea that community participation is vital for the well-being of the individual and that communities therefore have value in and of themselves comes back again and again throughout the series. Hey Arnold the movie, which pits Arnold and his friends against a real estate developer who plans to tear down the old neighborhood and replace it with a shopping mall, is basically an 80-minute screed against gentrification. It's framed here as the destruction of a valuable established community for mere profit.
Out with the old, in with the new.
What's wrong with old things? Some old things are great. Yeah, like Mrs. Vitello. Whippersnapper.
This conflict is very much in line with what we mentioned before. That whole thing situation is hated most about urban areas. The prioritization of profit over, say, the housing of an entire neighborhood. As Du Bois wrote in Society of the Spectacle, urbanism is capitalism's seizure of the natural and human environment. Developing logically into absolute domination, capitalism can and must now remake the totality of space into its own setting. One major way he notes that they do this is by building large shopping centers.
He wants to buy up the whole neighborhood so he can knock it down and put up a fancy mall.
This construction project would effectively displace Arnold's community, and if Hillwood looks anything like your typical city, it would fling them farther away from the city's center, where they likely work, sending them on farther commutes and generally making their lives worse. Also, it would kill a community they've spent years developing. Naturally, Arnold's horrified because his community is an integral part of his identity, and that's actually healthy, according to a group of thinkers loosely labeled communitarian philosophers, mainly by their opponents. In a nutshell, communitarianism pushes back against classical liberal philosophy's conception of the individual as a completely separate actor, pursuing their own rational self-interest. Instead, communitarianism argues that our relationships and communities have a huge impact on our identities, and that we ought to bear that in mind while living our lives and structuring our societies. Hey Arnold seems to agree, arguing that the best way to live in an alienated world like ours is to form friendships and families with the people around us, even if they're just as weird and messed up as we are. The tenants at the boarding house represent one such improvised family. For as much as Oscar, Ernie, and Mr. Wynn and Arnold's grandparents may argue about noise and bathroom access, they also play games together, share advice, and even exchange Christmas presents. They're far from a traditional family, but the human need for familial ties is so strong that they find ways to make it work.
Even with all your annoying, stinking habits, the truth is, I love you guys.
The same ethos is at the heart of The Flood, in which the students in Mr. Simmons' class must overcome their differences to survive a natural disaster and save their teacher's life.
You worked together and became a tribe. I am so proud of you all.
And in one Thanksgiving special, Arnold and Helga flee their family dinners and crash their teacher Mr. Simmons' celebration. But his guests also start fighting, and the kids quickly realize that his Thanksgiving is no better than their own. But even as he admits to how horribly dinner is going, Mr. Simmons insists that there's something worth fighting for at this hot mess of a get-together.
I know that this isn't perfect, but those special people out there are the ones that I love. And every year, it's my little project to get them together in a room and try to make us all thankful for the things we've got.
So while Hey Arnold does insist that families, communities, and neighborhoods are worth preserving, it never pretends that human relationships are easy. In Hillwood, as in real life, they're often hard, disappointing, and frustrating as all hell. In response to this fact, Hey Arnold takes a sort of fatalist stance, suggesting that since we're all stuck in this crowd of nuts, weirdos, and freaks that is the human race, we might as well learn to be nice to each other and enjoy our time together. But what do you think, Wisecrack? How does the geography around you affect your life? Big thanks to our patrons as always for your support. Tap that subscribe button normally like you've overcome your problems through the power of community, and ring that bell like it's time for recess. And as always, thanks for watching, man. Peace.